This lesson is about osmosis. Osmosis is a type of passive transport, which is one of the three types of cell transport. There are some key terms that you should know, the first of which is a solute. A solute is a dissolved substance in a solution. A solvent is a substance that dissolves a solute, and a solution is a mixture consisting of a solute dissolved in a solvent. So, for example, solute could be Kool-Aid powder, solvent could be water, and the solution would be the Kool-Aid powder dissolved in the water. Osmosis is a special type of diffusion where water moves across a selectively permeable membrane. It is movement from an area of high water potential to an area of low water potential. So it's going from an area with low solute concentration to an area of high solute concentration. And as with other types of passive transport, the solvent moves without any energy. There are some similarities and differences between diffusion and osmosis. The main thing that they both have in common is that they're examples of passive transport. And with both diffusion and osmosis, they'll continue until an equilibrium is reached. Whereas with diffusion, the solvent and the solute particles, they'll move to equalized concentrations, whereas in osmosis, only the solvent particles move, the solutes don't move. So with osmosis, it's just the water molecules that are moving. With diffusion, it's both. There are three osmotic conditions: hypotonic, hypertonic, and isotonic. You have to understand each of the conditions and be able to explain how it affects plants versus animal cells. First up, we've got hypotonic solutions. This is when the fluid around a cell has a lower concentration of solutes than the cytoplasm of the cell. As a result, the water diffuses into the cell by osmosis. In animal cells, they'll swell and then they may rupture, so they might lyse. Whereas in plant cells, if water enters, it's actually really good because then it increases the turgor pressure and the cell becomes turgid. In hypertonic solutions, the fluid around a cell has a higher concentration of solutes in the cytoplasm of the cell. As a result, the water diffuses out of the cell via osmosis. In animal cells, they'll shrivel or they'll become crenated, whereas plant cells, they'll lose turgor pressure and become plasmolyzed. Last up, we've got isotonic solutions. This is when the fluid around a cell has a concentration of solutes equal to the concentration of the cytoplasm of the cell. As a result, the concentrations are at an equilibrium and there's no net movement of water, so there isn't a surplus of water coming in or a surplus of water leaving the cell. Animal cells are normal, whereas plant cells, they'll lose turgor pressure and become flaccid. Here are two diagrams illustrating the differences between animals and plant cells in different osmotic conditions. Feel free to pause the video and copy it out into your notes. Just as a recap, in osmosis, only the water molecules move, not the solutes. Water is always traveling from an area of high water potential to an area of low water potential. And that wraps up the last type of passive transport, osmosis. Just as a reminder, there are three types of cell transport: passive, active, and bulk. There are three types of passive transport: simple diffusion, facilitated diffusion, and osmosis. All three require no energy. The only thing that's required to drive the transport would be the presence of a concentration gradient. The following three questions are questions that will be fair game on any test or exam. Number 1, illustrate the scenario. The cell is surrounded by a solution that has more solutes and less water outside the cell than the interior of the cell. Which type of osmotic condition is this cell in? Number 2, illustrate this scenario. The cell is surrounded by a solution that has equal the amount of solutes and solvent inside and outside of the cell. Which type of osmotic condition is this cell in? And the last question, number 3, illustrate this scenario. The cell is surrounded by a solution that has less solutes and more water than the interior of the cell. Which type of osmotic condition is this cell in? I will post a separate video illustrating all of the answers.